Good afternoon. Getting right down to business here. We're doing it live, doing more at 4 weekday afternoons, right after Guy Benson and just before the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang at 5. And tonight, stay tuned at 6 for Winning with WINANS with top-ranked money manager Ken WINANS at WINANSinvestments.com. Right now, it's Mottek On Money, live on the air, 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at KBC.com. And yes, the on-demand Mottek On Money podcast, KBC.com, Apple iTunes, YouTube, all of your favorite podcast platforms. Record-shattering start to the new week on Wall Street, coming off last week's record-shattering week for stocks and Bitcoin. Stocks did close mixed today, but the NASDAQ and the S&P 500 managed to close at all-time highs. Last week was crypto week. This week, it's big tech earnings week on Wall Street. Busy week of big tech highlighted earnings, and we're also watching the latest developments on tariffs. The NASDAQ moving higher today, hitting its sixth consecutive record close following last week's record-shattering rally. We see the Dow pulling back 19 points at the bell today, reversing earlier gains. The S&P 500 up 9. That one at a record high at 6,306, popping above 6,300 for the first time. And yes, the NASDAQ up 78.5 points to a record high close just below 21K here at 20,974. We also saw gold popping to a 5-week high today, above $3,400 an ounce once again. Right now, we're looking at gold hovering at $34.10 and change. Platinum saw a big pop, just below $1,500 now, and silver is just below $40 an ounce. Coming up later this hour, I'll be joined by AXEL MERK, founder, president, and chief investment officer at MERK Investments, focused on gold and precious metals, which includes the VanEck MERK Gold ETF OUNZ. AXEL MERK, also an economist and author of the book Sustainable Wealth. This week, seeing investors focused on clarity on U.S. trade policy and also the earnings from the big names in the tech world, including Alphabet, Google, and Tesla, set to release earnings updates on Wednesday. Those will be the first of the Mag 7 to report for the second quarter, even though technically Tesla has been bumped off the Mag 7 list in exchange for Broadcom. We'll be talking more about that here as well. The EU said to be stepping up the scope of its retaliation if it fails to reach a deal with the U.S. President Trump's hardline stance and EU member opposition to concessions impacting hopes for a deal there. Over the weekend, the Commerce Secretary reaffirmed President Trump's August deadline for new tariffs. We also got quarterly earnings news from Cleveland Cliffs, and Verizon, lifting those stocks today. Cleveland Cliffs' second quarter financial report beat analysts' expectations. Also today, Domino's Pizza reported sales ahead of expectations as new products drew buyers, helping to offset the impact of tariff uncertainty. Domino's Pizza has raised the dough, and we're seeing that stock move higher as well. Coming up also this hour, we'll talk about closer to home what's happening. A terrifying situation in Hollywood over the weekend. A car plowed into a crowd at a nightclub, and the driver was shot. Police are now looking for the shooter. I'll talk about that chaotic situation that happened over the weekend with the Honorable Dennis ZINE, former L.A. City Council member and retired LAPD sergeant with 50-plus years of service to the City of Angels. Also, sadly, flags are flying at half-staff in L.A. County today in honor of the 3 L.A. County Sheriff's deputies who were killed last week in an explosion at the Sheriff's Training Facility in Monterey Park. An old military grenade that was retrieved by the bomb squad in Santa Monica last week reportedly is what exploded, killing the deputies. We honor their service and their memory, and the Day Honorable Dennis ZINE will be joining us to talk about that as well. Joining us now in studio, and I'm elated to say we're with top-ranked money manager Ken WINANS, president and chief investment officer at WINANS Investments at WINANSinvestments.com. Ken WINANS, a market historian, author of numerous books, including Investment Atlas 1, 2, and 3, Creating Wealth Using Historical Trends. Ken WINANS is also a Forbes magazine contributor, so be sure to check out his latest articles in Forbes. He also has his crypto credentials, and, by the way, he's also a wine aficionado. He loves to talk about wine. We'll be doing that in the 6 o'clock hour this evening because, most importantly, he's host of Winning with WINANS, heard every Monday evening at 6 p.m. on your favorite station, 790 KBC. And we salute you, Ken WINANS, for 1 year of Winning with WINANS. So thank you so much. Great to see you here in the studio, Ken.
Frank, it's always great. I drove from Vegas today. You saw me. I walked around
Yes.
everything.
Isn't that something? That's right. That's the big news. Somehow Tesla got bumped off. So not so magnificent to some people, anyway.
Well, apple pie in the thing. But, hey, I think we're going to find the miners are going to have these monster numbers And then, Frank, I know that we talk about inflation. I know you talk about it constantly, but I will bring up the number one thing that I look at in the case of is the gold, silver, and platinum moves inflationary. I don't think they are for this one simple reason. When I go look at the other 19 commodities that I track daily, they're all heading south except for cattle. Anybody who's bought a steak lately knows what that's going for.
Very interesting. And, of course, then there's Bitcoin, which hit a record high last week. We're coming off a crypto week here, and that big Genius Act that was signed by President Trump last week, and a couple of other bills related to crypto still being considered by the Senate now. But Bitcoin hitting an all-time high last week, above 123,000. Right now we're, let's see, just above 117,000 here at the moment. It pulled back a bit over the weekend. What about that big news on Bitcoin? Yep, very big news. That's still evolving under a pro-crypto administration. So a lot to talk about there. And look at some of the other, looks like Doge has seen a rally here. 27 cents all of a sudden. It was, around 16 cents not too long ago. And Ethereum, look at this, 37.51 here at last check. And Solana, which has popped to 195. Pretty decent rally here. All right, looks like another one that popped today was Block, formerly known as Square. That's that little payment system where people, mostly freelancers, pull out that little square, like haircutters and so forth, right?
On your phone and swipe on your phone.
Now it's called Block, and looks like that one popped today, more than $5 at 78 and change. Didn't get a chance to read in on that one, but probably earnings are related, it looks like here. And the Magnificent One back in focus, also hitting record highs last week, pulling back slightly today, down to, $1.03 lower to 171 and change. What about some of these names here?
Well,
IBM, known as Big Blue, the bluest of the blue chips, part of the Dow Jones Industrial Average, and finally came to life, right, in the last year or two, pulling back today a bit, down $1.16 at 284.71. What about Netflix, which has seen an epic run-up, up another 24 today at 1,233 and change? All right, also a lot of focus of attention these days on
Mic Drop, hosted by former Navy SEAL Mike Ritland. It's raw.
Any single time that you left the wire, you could lose 4 guys.
It's unfiltered.
That was the most horrible screaming I'd ever heard. Taking a hit on the chin, you want to pay it back?
It's tough talk from the top minds in their field.
Would I choose to not do our duty as military fighting men? No, I would not make that decision, without question.
Mic Drop. Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
Defense stocks as well. RTX, formerly Raytheon, up 6 cents today at 151 and change. A lot of talk about NATO countries getting Patriot missiles and equipment from RTX. So what about the defense sector here now? All right, so General Dynamics, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, which has seen a rebound too. Gun stocks, ammunition stocks too. Very interesting. I know you track commodities very, very closely. Remember, OJ was back in the news last year. Not that OJ, but orange juice. Talking about got that big spike. You mentioned it briefly. What are some of the other commodities that are attracting your attention?
Well, this was
now beef is the new egg, right? So many moving parts these days, and oil also in focus today. Oil pulling back as a little impact is seen from the EU sanctions on Russia as the EU locks horns with Russia now over Ukraine and the ongoing war there. And, of course, we're following developments in the Middle East. And we did see that brief spike in oil prices following the wiping out of Iran's nuclear program. But oil is hovering in the mid-60s. Quite remarkable. Very interesting. And what about energy plays here at the moment? We've been talking nuclear as well, in addition to following the oil markets very, very closely. What do you see ahead for the rest of the year in the energy sector? A lot of uncertainty got lifted, but just a couple of weeks ago, on the 4th of July, when President Trump signed the big, beautiful bill into law, the uncertainty over tax policy has now been lifted, but still nervousness over tariffs and how this is all going to play out today. We were reminded of that when Stellantis, which makes Jeep, along with used to be Chrysler, right, and now it's a conglomeration of other brands, domestic as well as overseas, warns of a shock $2.7 billion loss as tariffs have kicked in. Stellantis making news today, say it's going to lose nearly $3 billion due partly to tariffs. What's your reaction to that big news, and what do you see ahead on this tariff uncertainty?
I think
All right, for those that can't afford steak, there's always pizza. And Domino's made news today. The stock did move higher earlier as deliveries grew again, offsetting an earnings miss. But at the closing bell, looks like Domino's did move a bit lower here, down just about $4 at $4.62 and change, moving slightly higher in after-hours trading. What about Domino's?
They learned what they have to do to make things work. So restaurants and retailers, again, I just don't, not showing up in the stock prices.
All right, and Vegas certainly an economic bellwether, and you're based there now, Ken Winans. Give us a Vegas update. Well, fantastic, Ken. Look forward to continuing the conversation here. I always say I wish we had more time, but luckily we will this evening at 6 o'clock on Winning with WINANS with top-ranked investment expert Ken Winans at WINANSinvestments.com. And when I say top-ranked, that means the highest possible Morningstar rating. So congratulations on that, Ken. And congratulations on the one-year anniversary of Winning with WINANS. And we will continue the conversation at 6 o'clock right here on your favorite station, Winning with WINANS, airing at 6 o'clock this evening here on 790 KBC. Ken, fantastic to have you with us back here at the station. And let's continue the talk at 6 o'clock. And right now, out to the freeways we go here on 790 KBC. Mottek On Money continues, 790 KBC. Record-shattering day for stocks again today with the S&P 500 at a record-high close of 9 points at 6306, moving above 6,300 for the first time today. NASDAQ continues on a roll, up more than 78 points to a record-high close just below 21K now at 20,974. The Dow, which was higher earlier in the session, ended with a closing loss today of 19 points at 44,323. Taking a look at gold, it's gotten to pop today to a 5-week high back above 3,400, up $52 right now at 34.10 and change. Silver continues on a roll as well at 39 and change. Platinum at just about almost 1,500 now, 1493.10. That one's been on a roll too. Shares of Block, formerly known as Square, that company that facilitates the payments for mostly freelance folks out there. Square, a very popular tool, now known as Block. That stock soared more than $5 today. It's 78 and change. Block will replace Hess Oil, which is being acquired by Chevron. Block, the fintech company formerly known as Square and headed up by Jack Dorsey, expanded its offerings to include payment services through Cash App, and looks like they've also received approval from the FDIC to offer consumer loans. So XYZ is the ticker symbol on that one. Block shares moving up $5.26 at 78.08. Watching what's happening with the cryptos, of course, after Bitcoin at a record high last week, above 123,000. Right now it's up about 500 at 117,300. Ethereum at 37.50. Solana at 195. Doge at the moment at 27 cents. And now the latest news in 790 KBC. Mottek On Money continues here at 790 KBC. Good afternoon. Gold has popped to a 5-week high, back above $3,400 an ounce. Platinum is just below $1,500 an ounce, and silver is getting close to $40 an ounce. All this as the dollar slipped overseas today. We're also watching, of course, cryptos too, with Bitcoin hitting a record high last week, above 123,000. It has slipped to 117 or so. Let's bring in AXEL MERK now, founder, president, and chief investment officer at MERK Investments, focused on gold and precious metals, which includes the Van Eck MERK Gold ETF, OUNZ. AXEL MERK, also an economist and author of the book Sustainable Wealth, and a longtime contributor to this program, for which we're very grateful. AXEL MERK, good afternoon to you, sir.
Frank, a golden afternoon to you, or a crypto afternoon to you, or a stock afternoon to you. Everything's up at you.
We're approaching the golden hour. You're right. So let's focus on gold, which, of course, you're the expert on here. So give us your reaction to this latest move on gold here, back above 3,400 an ounce here today.
Well, one of the things that struck me is that everything was up, but in the broader context, so-called real yields are down. There are market measures of what your money is worth 10 years from now. And of course, while nobody knows what's going to happen in 10 years, relative moves in the markets do matter. And the market decided that over a 10-year basis, you're going to get less for your money. And that's why things like gold moved higher. That's the best explanation I have as to why that exactly happened. It's difficult to say. We've had, of course, a lot of headlines but it's always difficult to attribute something. The fact of the matter is that gold and many other assets, of course, had a very good day today.
All right, the other precious metals getting jealous of gold. It looks like they've been making moves on the upside. The silver, close to $40 an ounce, and platinum, the highest we've seen in more than a dozen years, right? Close to $1,500. What about those moves?
Well, silver has more complex dynamics, and notably, it's more subject to what the economy is doing because there's more industrial use. And so one of the themes, and there was a Wall Street Journal story out this morning, that more people are thinking that this economy may not be quite as weak as expected. Some people have given up to wait out what the uncertainty is and start spending again. I'm not so sure how strong the economy is, but certainly the glass is more half full today than it was before. And when that happens, industrial commodities can do better. And silver, in that sense, is both a monetary metal but also an industrial metal. And so, yes, commodities have been doing well.
Also, there's geopolitical uncertainty and nervousness, certainly. That's also historically been a reason why gold has certainly spiked, right?
It is. That said, when one has to differentiate, I think, between a short-term spike because of geopolitical uncertainty, the market tends to get used to that, and then the short-term spike in gold tends to abate. I think I've mentioned on your program, I happen to think we are overall in a less stable environment, that the peaceful era we've had pretty much since World War II is somewhat over, and what we see in Ukraine and Gaza are just symptoms of a new era. And if that is the case, then the quote-unquote cost of doing business more generally is higher, and we might just see more elevated prices on an ongoing basis.
All right, you're also a currency expert, and what about the dollar? Where does it go from? Where does it go from here? We see the euro now at 117 versus the dollar. It looks like here the yen at 147, the pound at about 135.
Well, the key thing to think about there is in Europe they're going to spend a gazillion, and that's a technical term, on both defense but also on industrial policy. It's not just in the U.S. where there's industrial policy on the coming. The Europeans want to spend quite a fortune on it. The Germans, in order to get the military spending passed, they needed to promise their coalition partner to also invest over $500 billion in infrastructure over the next decade. On the EU level, they would love to spend more on the industrial side, mostly because they want to issue debt that's jointly guaranteed by all the governments. What will happen exactly is, of course, not known at this stage, but the attitude is one of spending, and that can also pull the currency higher. And as divided as opinions are about the tax package that was just passed, net, there is more of a restraint here. Obviously, there is not exact fiscal discipline in the U.S. either, but it seems like the pockets are more open in Europe in particular, and that has been helping the euro.
Very interesting. We're coming off of so-called crypto week with that genius bill signed into law last week and two other big crypto bills still being considered in Washington. We've been having these conversations since the dawn of the crypto era. Give us your thoughts about how crypto has evolved, so-called digital gold versus analog gold, and how things have evolved to this point.
Well, on the regulatory side, it's good that there is clarity. As the Trump administration says that lots of bright minds.
Hello, my loves. It's Lala Kent. Yes, that Lala. And if you're not listening to the Give Them Lala podcast, here's what you're missing out on.
I stayed with my two kids. Mom and Kristen shared a room, and you and Landon shared a room. What the hell is going on? A lesbian couple, a gay couple, and then this
random woman with two kids.
So weird, but to me, it's the most common thing. This is my brother, his best friend, and my mom and her best friend. This is just how we roll. This is called the pod, okay?
Give Them Lala. Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
Work on this. They might as well work on it in the U.S. And Polymarket just bought a small exchange in the U.S. as well. There is an amazing technology that warrants further development. And if it's shunned from the U.S., that's not good for growth in the medium term. As far as Bitcoin specifically is concerned, we just did a little study on a risk-adjusted basis. It actually moves very, very similar to the S&P. which somewhat means that Bitcoin at this stage is more of a kind of levered play on the S&P. Obviously, it is quite different. It is, of course, not perfectly correlated, but what that means is, in plain English, that it is somewhat of a risk asset, whereas gold is much more of a defensive asset. And everybody's excited about it who invests in that space, but it may not, in a downturn, it might not be providing the same sort of protection that people hope for from gold. Now, obviously, with gold, there's no assurance either that it will happen, but gold has a longer history on that. And I think I've mentioned to you before, Bitcoin is trying to figure out what it wants to be when it grows up, and I think we're exactly in that phase. But all that said, the developments that there is a clearer and cleaner regulatory environment, I think it's going to be very, very helpful for the space.
Very interesting. You're also active on X, and I saw your posting today regarding the what you said. Bitcoin is mostly a leverage play on the S&P. Can you give us some more insights here on that? And people can follow you, of course, on X as well at AXEL MERK, and that's very interesting that you just that you mentioned that.
Well, I don't want to get too technical, but if you look at the risk-adjusted return, it mirrors it closely. Also, the correlation, to use a term that's not too complicated, it is more correlated to the S&P 500 than gold is. I mean, gold famously has a near zero correlation to equities in the long run. Of course, that doesn't mean it's always uncorrelated. These are correlations that are morphing in and out. And the proof is ultimately in the pudding, meaning when we have a very rough market, how will these things perform? And we don't really know that because we haven't had a really rough market other than these very short-term blips. And what the gold investor, quote unquote, hopes for is that if there is really a contraction, which might get levered players to delever, then the Federal Reserve will come in, pump more money into the economy, and gold might go up. And the question is whether Bitcoin will behave similarly or be more consistent with how stocks are doing. And that jury is out. We can run all the historical studies that we want. The life of Bitcoin is just too short to know exactly how it's going to behave in a true crisis.
Axel, thank you very much for that thorough update. We do always appreciate it here. That is Axel MERK, the founder, president, and chief investment officer, MERK Investments, focused on gold and precious metals, including the VanEck MERK Gold ETF, OUNZ. Axel MERK, also an economist and author of the book Sustainable Wealth. Axel, it's always a pleasure to have you with us here. Thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
My pleasure.
Out to the freeways now, 790 KBC. Frank Mottek here for United Gold Group. Did you know that for more than 10,000 years, gold has been the greatest store of value and considered a safe haven asset to preserve your wealth? Well, now the U.S. debt at more than $36 trillion and climbing, a possible recession on the horizon, and the development of the digital dollar, central bank digital currency, it's more critical now than ever before to safeguard your assets like your cash savings and retirement accounts with physical gold. Opening a gold IRA is one of the best ways to secure your wealth and create a stable financial future. Stop worrying about your retirement in the market and cash savings in the bank. Feel confident, prepared, and in control with physical gold and silver. Give my friends at United Gold Group a call. The number is 800-753-8534. Mention Mottek and you can get $1,000 worth of silver with a qualifying purchase. Call now, 800-753-8534. Again, that's 800-753-8534 or visit UnitedGoldGroup.com. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KBC. Terrifying situation in East Hollywood over the weekend. The LAPD says 8 minutes after a man was escorted out of a nightclub, he drove up onto the sidewalk and rammed into a crowd, injuring at least 30 people. In front of the place, the driver was then pulled from the vehicle and shot after the crash. The crowd turned on the driver, pulling him from the car, kicking and punching him before someone else approached and shot him. The driver has been arrested, and the search continues now for the person that shot the driver. Joining us live now is the Honorable Dennis ZINE, former LA City Council member, retired LAPD sergeant, 50-plus years of service to the City of Angels. Dennis ZINE, thank you for taking the call, and give us your reaction to what happened.
Frank, it's just one more horrifying situation taking place in the city of Los Angeles. And while you have people trying to enjoy the evening, be entertained, this tragedy takes place where an individual who's ejected because of his behavior or misbehavior gets in his car, and then he rams the place to try and kill whoever he can. And then one of the individuals who witnesses what happens has a gun, whether he's licensed at that or not, we don't know. and then shoots the individual. I mean, a series of tragedies. When an individual is not conducting himself properly at a venue and they're ejected by security, you would not think that they'd go and retaliate. But this is simply a matter of retaliation because he was ejected and didn't appreciate being ejected. Whatever his conduct caused that to take place. But this is what happens when people can't control their tempers, can't control their demeanor, and we have innocent people who become victims. And when the crowd attacked this man, they were brutal on this individual, and then an individual with a gun shoots him. So I know we've got an APB going out for the individual that shot with the gun. There was a description that was released on that individual. So just another tragedy. When you want to go out and have an entertaining, good evening, you wouldn't expect it would end in this type of tragic situation, but just another negative situation for entertainment in the Hollywood area.
So heartbreaking. The good news is, according to the last report I saw, it looks like all the people injured are stable and expected to survive, including the driver, and I guess charges still being considered by the DA there, but hopefully they'll throw the book at whoever did this.
Well, he will, and I had a meeting this afternoon with our district attorney, and he's done a wonderful job, and he's very effective in prosecuting. Once the law enforcement agency delivers that individual the package of information, he's very aggressive in his prosecution. He's really turned that district attorney's office around from what it used to be under the previous district attorney, Gascon. But Huckman's doing a great job, and it's interesting. We had a conversation today regarding public safety.
Yeah, maybe you can tell us more about that, how the pendulum has swung since the change in the DA's office was made.
Totally swung to the victim's rights instead of the criminal's rights. And what Gascon did was enhance everything he could. And it's interesting, that our current district attorney has reversed everything that Gascon put into place. He reversed it, threw it out, and came in with what we have reasonable law and order procedures within the office. He's got the very dedicated deputy district attorneys who were frustrated as they could be with the environment. They're now very pleased, but you have a prosecutor, and that's what we elected. We want a prosecutor to go after the criminal element that's causing problems and causing great issues for our society. So District Attorney Hawkins is doing a great job, and I hope he continues in that endeavor and make it a safer place, because clearly we need to not only enhance our police operations with personnel, but we need to have a district attorney that follows those cases through successfully, and incarceration when it's necessary, or probation, whatever the case may be. But he's very, very effective, and I commend him for his accomplishments in the short time he's been the district attorney of LA County.
On the air live with the Honorable Dennis ZINE. And now a very difficult story here, Dennis ZINE, as we see out there all over the place, flags flying at half-staff in Los Angeles County today in honor of the 3 L.A. County Sheriff's deputies who were killed last week in an explosion at the Sheriff's Training Facility in Monterey Park. According to Eric Spillman, who's an excellent reporter at KTLA Channel 5, sources are telling him that it was an old military grenade retrieved by the bomb squad from a place in Santa Monica last week. That is what reportedly exploded, killing the 3 deputies. We honor their service and their memory here. Give us a reaction to this horrible tragedy.
It's very seldom that we see these type of tragedies occur. These are trained people who have extensive training in explosives, firearms explosives, very dedicated. Once you get into an assignment like that, you stay through retirement. And these deputies and their families, it is a huge law enforcement family. Most of them are married to deputies. They have deputies in their families, brothers and sisters, and a total of 16 children with these deputies who perished in this tragedy. And you have an individual who somehow took those items from the military, illegally as it was, and then stashed them away, moves away. Then a lady calls law enforcement, which was the appropriate activity. Santa Monica police respond. They see it's explosives. They call the deputy sheriffs because that's who handles it. There's only 2 agencies in Los Angeles County, LAPD and LA County Sheriff's Department. They handle the explosives. Not every police department has an explosive unit. And tragically, these 3 deputies lost their lives with the extensive time they have. One came on in 2003, 2006, and 1992, the senior investigator of that detail, the explosives detail. It's so tragic. It breaks my heart what they're going to go through. And those 16 children that have lost their their loved one, the one who brought them into the world with their wives. And again, many of these deputies, the families are just full of deputies that the whole families joined the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. It's such a tragic loss. But I've read about this a lot, and it was interesting that this is the first time we've had since I think it was 1857, if I'm correct on that date, where they had multiple deputies who were killed in a situation. But our hearts go out for these people. The families will be taken care of financially, so the kids don't have to worry about college or not being forced out of their residence. But as far as the life of these deputies and the sacrifices they made protecting people. And the last time we had a situation in LA County, this was in Los Angeles City, where 2 LAPD bomb experts perished in the situation in North Hollywood.
The Honorable Dennis ZINE, thank you very much for joining us live here. We honor their service, their sacrifice, and their memory here on 790 KABC.
Hello, my loves. It's Lala Kent. Yes, that Lala. And if you're not listening to the Give Them Lala podcast, here's what you're missing out on.
I stayed with my 2 kids. Mom and Kristen shared a room, and you and Landon shared a room. What the hell is going on? A lesbian couple, a gay couple, and then this
Random woman with 2 kids.
So weird, but to me, it's the most common thing. This is my brother, his best friend, and my mom and her best friend. This is just how we roll. This is called the pod, okay?
Give Them Lala. Follow and listen on your favorite platform.